Hello everyone, welcome to Storytime. Today, let's dive together into the mysterious depths of Kong Skull Island. Get ready for a journey filled with action, colossal monsters, and breathtaking landscapes. This feature film also explores the relationship between man and nature, responsibility and respect for the creatures that inhabit our planet. So make yourself comfortable and start with me on this unforgettable adventure. In 1944, somewhere over the South Pacific, young Lieutenant Hank Marlowe escapes the crash of his plane and lands with his parachute on a mysterious island. The opponent also survives, and the death battle continues on the ground. They then run into the forest and fight until they end up near a cliff. The death of one of this profile when suddenly, a gigantic hand of monkey crashes heavily on the ground. The two paralyzed men then see Kong rising above them. In 1973, in Washington, D.C., government official Bill Randa and geologist Houston Brooks rush for a crucial interview. They meet Senator Willis to receive funds for an expedition to a recently discovered unknown location called Skull Island. At first reluctant, the politician does not really like the idea, but the many opposing arguments make him give in to the point that he also grants them a military escort. In Vietnam, the Sky Devil Squadron is reunited for its last day before it can finally return home. Led by Colonel Preston Packard, they include Captain Earl Cole, Slivko, Relis, Glenn Mills, and Jack Chapman, who is the Colonel's right-hand man. The latter receives the call for the expedition and gladly accepts the work. Randa and Brooks meet in a bar a former captain of the British Special Air Service named James Conrad, who, given his combat qualities, is the ideal man to be their tracker. Conrad sits down with them to hear their plan. Risk alert, he asks for more money because there is a high chance that extreme weather conditions or predatory creatures will kill them. In a dark room, anti-war photographer Mason Weaver receives a call to join the expedition. She arrives in stride at the base to meet Packard and his men. Shown is a team of Landsat scientists, including fellow Brooks geologists San Lin and Landsat employees Victor Neves and Steve. The team gets acquainted while sailing on the ocean before taking helicopters to the island. They must pass through clouds that produce hurricane-like conditions. After an eventful ride through the storm, the helicopters fly over the area. Then the soldiers begin to drop seismic charges into the ground, triggering explosions. Almost immediately, a tree is thrown through one of the helicopters, sending it crashing to the ground. The team then sees Kong, the guardian of the place, dominating them from all his height. The goalkeepers strike violent punches that fall, crashing the attacking helicopter like flies. violence of the fight is such that the few survivors are separated. Amid the dancing flames and the remains of the helicopters, Packard discovers the power of Kong. After reuniting with his men, Packard confronts Randa at gunpoint and demands to know what really brought them there. Randa admits that he has known about the existence of monsters like Kong for some time, and he is looking for evidence for his organization, Monarch. Conrad, Weaver, Brooks, Lynn, Slivko, and Neves are on the move and are overwhelmed by a huge, placid buffalo with gigantic horns coming out of a river. Randa, Packard, Mills, Cole, and other soldiers go in search of Chapman, and thus venture deeper into this hostile environment. As they pass through a bamboo forest, a soldier is petrified, killed instantly by being impaled through the mouth. Above them is a giant spider that starts attacking them. Mills is pulled by the strap, and the rest of the soldiers begin to chop off his legs. Packard coldly kills the spider. Yet vigilant, Conrad's group is cornered by a tribe of camouflaged Iwis natives. As they try to defend themselves, out comes the older Lieutenant Hank Marlowe. He assures the two groups that they are not enemies, and then invites the adventurers to pass the wall before nightfall. Alone near a river, Chapman sees Kong crossing it to treat a wound caused by the gunfire of the helicopters. The latter cools off. And then suddenly finds a giant octopus. The hugs get tangled up. Then he pushes his tentacles away before he starts greedily eating him. He then drags the carcass in order to taste it comfortably. Sheltered behind a huge wall, Marlowe then explains to the group that he has been there for 28 years and that he has learned a lot about its inhabitants and the island itself. Kong is like a god to them, protecting them from the terrifying underground creatures that have killed the natives for centuries, as well as Kong's own family. If anything happens to him, the much larger skull crawlers will dominate the island. Conrad reveals that they plan to get to the north side of the island within 3 days in order to be rescued. Marlowe knows it can't be done in 3 days on foot. He then agrees to guide them and takes the crew on a boat that needs to be tinkered with. Along the way, Weaver sees a huge water buffalo stuck under a crashed helicopter. She tries to lift it to free the buffalo, and Kong shows up and pulls the helicopter away. He briefly looks at Weaver, more impressed than terrified of him, and leaves. Still alone, Chapman walks through the forest and sits on a log. This turns out to be a giant insect that does not retaliate. As the creature leaves, it is killed by a skull crawler. After a peaceful night beautifully illuminated by the undulating auroras, eager the team is working on the repair of the boat, which ends up started. A grateful Marlowe bids farewell to the rescued Iwis, and the expedition begins. Shortly after leaving, they see a flare indicating the position of Colonel Preston Packard's team. Everyone screams with joy, but Neves is suddenly caught by carnivorous birds. The totally helpless others see him quickly being torn in the air. The survivors rejoin, and despite the strong opposition of Marlowe and Manson, they go west in search of Chapman. He leads the group into the Forbidden Zone, which is an ancient battleground between Kong's ancestors and the Skull Crawlers. The huge remains of Kong's family rest in the place yellowed by the choking smoke. A skull crawler appears, forcing the group into hiding. The creature then spits out the skull and dog tags of Chapman. Randa takes pictures and is also grabbed and eaten by a skull crawler. The hunt begins. Another beast appears and begins attacking and eating the victims with its tongue. The hell spit by their flamethrowers will seem effective, but will be swept away by the monster's tail. The groups continue their battle with the skull crawlers, plus a wave of carnivorous birds. Marlowe pulls out the sword that belonged to Ikari and cuts several of the birds before handing it to Conrad. Weaver throws a lighter into a hole of igniting smoke and sets the creature on fire. After the fight, they regroup. Packard is still motivated to find Chapman. Conrad therefore shows him his identity discs to confirm his death. Yet Packard still wants to search for the ammunition stash so they can kill Kong. He is determined to get revenge for his men's deaths, despite justified objections. While progressing through this forest, they discover the newspaper of Chapman planted in a tree. Pursuing their goal, the reserve of ammunition so coveted by Colonel Preston Packard is offered to them. That night, Packard gathers explosives and sets an evil trap for Kong. Meanwhile, Conrad and Weaver encounter the creature. And it cautiously approaches, putting her hand to its sweet face. However, Packard ignites the fuel along the water, which attracts Kong. The latter's fur catches fire. He still tramples Steve and kills another man in the chaos before collapsing. Packard then prepares to set off the explosives, but Conrad and Weaver attempt to stop him. They convince the other soldiers of Kong's importance in stopping the skull crawlers from pullulating. The soldiers turn against Packard, who remains defiant. Just then, the larger skull crawler erupted from the ground, forcing the group to run. Packard stays behind to detonate the explosives, but Kong crushes him under his fist. The survivors then head for the shore as the main skull crawler pursues them. Cole stays behind to sacrifice himself with the explosive devices he strapped on. However, the monster whips him against a rock wall, and his sacrifice is useless. As the skull crawler heads towards the group, Kong arrives and confronts the beast. He is trapped by chains, but the strafing fed by the survivors distracts the monster's attention. Kong then uses a ship's propeller attached to a length of anchor chain to defeat the beast, slicing it through the throat. grabs the skull crawler and throws it against the wall, accidentally throwing Weaver into the river. After knocking out the monster, Kong holds Weaver in his hand while fighting. He rams his fist down the monster's throat and rips his guts out. The owner then places her next to Conrad before leaving. Shortly after, the survivors, marked by what they have experienced, leave on the boat. And we hear the helicopters coming to recover them. In the distance, Kong watches to continue to protect his territory. Finally, Marlowe returns home to Chicago, where he sees his wife and adult son again. He then sits down to watch a Cubs game with a hot dog and a beer. Conrad and Weaver are held in an interrogation room by Monarch. Brooks and Lynn enter the room and tell them that Kong isn't the only monster. This world has not always belonged to humanity. Then slides show cave drawings of other monsters. Thank you for enjoying this exciting film with us. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell. See you soon on Storytime.